Okay, so this is actually a really interesting one, and it kind of caught me off guard because just a few days ago we had ourselves some different news with this player, so the fact that we're even conversing about him in this context is somewhat surprising to me. But today we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks and an apparent interest that they may have in one Tyler Ennis. So, I know a lot of people are going to go out there and say in the comments something like, oh, what in the world, they're talking about Tyler Ennis, sign Petey and Hughes first. What are you doing, Benny? Come on. And I'll just say this right off the bat. I get it. There definitely is some concern that the team should be putting towards the main guys on the squad. But at the same time, it would be foolish to go out there and completely close yourself off to the free agent market and at least acknowledge that there would be players that exist in the hockey world that are unsigned and that you might actually see some value in to the point where you would want to bring them onto your squad. So, the update comes over here from Rick Dhaliwal on Donnie Dhali the other day. He had himself this to say on the show. I'm not saying they're going to sign him. It could be a PTO situation, but the Vancouver Canucks have been poking around with the Tyler Ennis camp. Now, Tyler Ennis, if we go over his entire profile over here, we all kind of know who Tyler Ennis is, right? He's 31 years old, 5'9", 161, definitely not a big guy, but he plays with such a killer instinct that has made him so effective in the previous, decade of playing hockey that it's been such a treat to watch Tyler Ennis ever since he was acquired by the Buffalo Sabres in 2008. Back in that time frame, he was in Medicine Hat, he was doing his thing, WHL, and by the time 2009-2010 rolled around, hey, guess what? He was a point-per-game player in his first stint with the Sabres, and under a point per game in the postseason. Kind of reminds me of Casey Mittelstadt, and now that I think about it, the transition from junior, well, in this case junior, Mittelstadt was college, into the Buffalo system was really good in his first season. But for Ennis, he kind of diverted from the Casey Mittelstadt path because he was actually really good after those first few years in Buffalo. As a small guy, he was going out there getting 20 goals a year, 40 points a year, but injuries started to really hold him back, and in 2015-16, heading into what was going to be his 7th year playing with the Sabres, he only played 23 games. Now, he started to get bounced around a lot afterwards from there. Minnesota, Toronto, Ottawa, Edmonton, and then Edmonton this most previous season, but you can kind of see that in his days in, for example, Ottawa in 2019-20, he was legit. 33 points, 61 games played, he had 14 goals. Again, he's still small, he's still 5'9". He went over to Ottawa in that season, though, and had 4 points in 9 games played, had himself 2 points in 3 games in the bubble, and this season had 9 points in 30 games with the Oilers in total. Now, it's actually really interesting when you take a look at what Tyler Ennis has been through recently. I remember particularly 5 months ago, he was sent on waivers, and a whole bunch of Oilers fans were really freaking out because, oh my goodness, Tyler Ennis is on waivers? Are you kidding me? This guy was really important, really good depth for our team. And honestly, just looking through the archives of what people have been talking about when it comes to Tyler Ennis, there's a very big chunk of this fan base that legitimately believes that Tyler Ennis was, despite the fact that he only had 9 points, one of the more reliable and stable forwards on this forward core. And that's kind of what I've come to expect out of Tyler Ennis these previous few seasons. Yes, he knows how to score points, he knows how to be good at the NHL level. He had done that for the entire first half of the 2010s. As you get older and as you start to produce less, it's not like those instincts just go away. You still know how to play the game and you still are able to analyze things properly. Everybody kind of remembers the Tyler Ennis spectacular goal that he scored where he jumped over Carey Price's stick and backhanded it while blindsided to the net. That was probably one of the best goals he's ever scored in his career, one of the best goals scored in the 2010s in my opinion. But Tyler Ennis today was a legitimately strong depth forward for the Oilers. And if you take a look at what was going on recently, it's actually kind of funny because he was taking part of a skate with the group earlier this week. Take a look at this tweet over here from Tom Gazzola. Eyes and ears from Rogers Place as informal skates continue today. The Oiler players are taking part are these ones: McDavid, Draisaitl, Nurse, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Hyman, Puljujarvi, Cassian, Russell, Bouchard, Broberg, Shore, and Turris. No Yamamoto, because he's an RFA, and then you had Tyler Ennis, who was also skating with the group. That was 3 days ago, and that was the update that we saw where I was like, oh, Tyler Ennis is sticking around with Edmonton, eh? Interesting to see a UFA sticking around with his old team and skating with the squad on their home ice. And I saw a lot of Oilers fans saying the same thing. Hey, nice to see Ennis there, you know. He's a hometown guy. He's from Edmonton. Wouldn't it be nice to just sign this guy to a PTO, have him on the squad here, and maybe see if he suits up for the team next season? But either way, if Rick Dhaliwal is correct here, and we indeed do see some interest from the Vancouver Canucks, I think this could be a pretty interesting depth signing just for the sake of it, you know? The Vancouver Canucks have enough forwards on their team already in the, well, if you don't want to say Pettersson because he's not signed technically, let's just say Pettersson. In the Lotto line, first and foremost, so Miller, Petey, Brock. The second line, you have yourselves Bo Horvat with Connor Garland and Niels Höglander. Third line, you have yourselves Pearson, Dickinson, Podkolzin, and then the fourth line, you can shuffle it around. There's Brendan Sutter in there, there's Zach McEwen in there, there's Tyler Mott in there, there's even Phil DiGiuseppe in there, who is actually a pretty good penalty-killing forward. Interesting to see how he's going to fit into the mix there. But Tyler Ennis could be seen as a pretty interesting pickup should you want to go that direction, because you're not going to expect him to play, like, 15 minutes a night. Probably going to have him in the 10s range. Maybe see him get a nice goal or two. Maybe have him in a pretty sheltered scoring kind of role, you know? When all your guys in the top 6 are tired, when you have an offensive zone draw and you need somebody to go out there and potentially spark up some offense, hey, Tyler Ennis might be able to do that. Also, he isn't too bad in his own zone either. When you're a small player, you kind of need to know how to adapt to the game around you as a guy who isn't as big and who can't just shove people off the puck. So guys like Tyler Ennis have developed certain skills that bigger guys just typically don't really exhibit all too much. So it's really interesting to see the progression of Tyler Ennis from Buffalo to Minnesota to Toronto to Ottawa to Edmonton, especially in the fact that we saw him go from team to team to team to team to team in the span of like 3-4 years. So it's really been not too long of a time for Tyler Ennis to bounce around here. I'm honestly kind of getting, you know, like a Thomas Vanek vibe out of this. Not that they're the same player by any means. Thomas Vanek was a lot more different in his skill set, but in the idea that they both spent so long in Buffalo, eventually became free agents and started bouncing around from team to team to team, getting traded, playoff rentals, playoff performances, and all that. And we've seen just how beneficial these kinds of guys can really be. The guys who bounce around, you know, the drifters, who go from team to team to team, who just come over here, they're like, yeah, I'm going to score 25 points this season, and I'm going to give some good leadership advice to your younger guys that you want to assimilate into the NHL. Those kinds of guys are valuable, and I know the Vancouver Canucks do have a lot of forwards already, but if you wanted to squeeze in another guy into the mix there, because the inevitable Vancouver Canucks injury bug is definitely going to happen again this season, maybe Tyler Ennis is your guy. He'll probably be cheap, especially if that PTO works out, if they actually end up doing a PTO. But either way, talk to me in the comments if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan. What do you think about the idea of Tyler Ennis coming over to Vancouver on a PTO? Should he be good enough? Maybe they sign him to a real contract, who really knows. If you're an Oilers fan, talk to me in the comments. What do you think about this idea as well? What did you think about Ennis last season? Because I did see a lot of people talking about how good this guy was, how sneakily useful he was as a depth forward on the Oilers squad. And even though he only had 9 points in 30 games played, which isn't fantastic, he still was a guy that I saw a lot of Oilers fans respect and be welcoming as a part of their team. If you do the math, though, actually, 9 divided by 30 multiplied out by 82, Tyler Ennis was on pace for 25 points. So, kind of on the dot there, isn't it? I don't know about you, but if I can get a fourth-line guy who gets 25 points in a season, that's pretty good. Especially last season, too. He had 33 points in 61 games. If you do the math on that season, let's add everything up. 33 plus 4, that's 37 total points split between the Senators and the Oilers, and you divide 37 by the 70 games he played in total this season, multiply that out by 82. Hey, he would have been on pace for 43 points. This guy on a PTO, he scored at a 43-point pace yesteryear, and this season he was on pace for 26 points. If this guy gets $1 million, I'm okay. Now, I know the Vancouver Canucks can't really afford to do that because, you know, money and Petey and Hughes. That's definitely where they should be focusing most of their attention on. But either way, talk to me in the comments. Canucks fan, Oilers fan, what do you think about Tyler Ennis? Do you think a PTO is in store? Would you like to see that? Talk to me in the comments. What do you think? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.